G'day everyone. So a little while ago, I made a balsa wood glider. You can find the link below. And I sent that glider to my dad, who's an aeronautical engineer, and he came back with two videos. One video is all the theory about how to make a glider that flies better, and the second video, he actually does it. So he makes a much, much better design than my one because he knows how to do it. He's trained in all this sort of stuff. So enjoy the first video, and the second video is in the link below as well.
Hi to all you Spark kids up at Springwood and Winmalee and elsewhere. I'm Tim Rodier's dad and my name's Terry. A little while ago you will have seen Tim make a video and make a glider out of some balsa wood. Tim sent this glider to me and asked me if I could make some suggestions on how its performance and how it might be improved. And the reason he asked me is I just happen to be an aeronautical engineer. When you ride your bike, you can feel the wind blowing against your face. And as you go faster, particularly down a hill, you'll notice that the wind force on your face gets stronger and stronger. And that force is called form drag. And so the amount of form drag an aircraft experiences when it's flying through the air can be reduced. The amount of force can be reduced if everything is streamlined and smooth, so it's easy for the air to flow around the aircraft. So Tim's glider, when you look at it, it's got this brace that goes across. It's got square edges, it's flat. That's ugly. The air has trouble getting around that smoothly. The same with the leading edges of the wings, same with the fin, same with the horizontal stabilizer. So there's things that need to be rounded off and smoothed off. And the wing of an airplane also, the wing of the aeroplane, it produces lift. That's its primary purpose because it's what holds the aircraft up in the air. However, the wing is also generating a swirl off the ends of the wingtips. It's called a vortex when it's swirling like that. Now, normally you can't see it, but if you look at this photograph now, you can see an aircraft is flying through cloud and the swirl is disturbing the cloud. So you can see the corkscrew caused by the vortices. Now, the amount of energy that is lost in these vortices is reduced if an aircraft has long, narrow wings, like gliders that you see. And so here's a photograph of an aeroplane called an ITA glider made in Germany. And so you can see it's got these very long and thin wings which help its performance. Now, engineers talk about wings having an aspect ratio. That's a bit awkward. So have a look at this little illustration. So a wing from the leading edge to the trailing edge of the wing, that's called a chord, that distance. And the distance between the wingtips is called the wingspan. And if you divide the chord into the span, then you get the aspect ratio. So if a wing is 5 times as long as it is wide, then it's got a ratio of 5. So on Tim's glider, he has a chord of 8 centimeters and a wingspan of 45 centimeters. So if you divide 8 into 45, you get 6.25. So his aspect ratio of this aeroplane here, so 80 that way, 45 that way, is 6.25, which is not particularly high. Gliders like the ITA and other high performance gliders, they will have an aspect ratio of about 30:1 or more. So they'll have long, thin wings. So the wings are 30 times wider, or the wingspan is 30 times greater than the width of the wing. I'm thinking that if I was making a glider, I would make it probably a balsa wood glider with about an aspect ratio of 10. Reducing the form drag and induced drag greatly increases an aircraft's glide ratio. Now, the glide ratio tells you how far an aircraft will fly without engines. So on this photograph or this illustration, you can see there are 3 examples. We've got the space shuttle, which has a glide ratio of 4.5 to 1. So if it's 1 kilometre up in the sky, it will fly for about 4.5 kilometres before it crashes into the ground. The Boeing 767 passenger airliner, it has a glide ratio of 12 to 1. So if it's 1 kilometre in the sky, it will fly for about 12 kilometres before it crashes into the ground. And then you look at the Eda glider, it's got a glide ratio of 71. So if it's 1 kilometre up in the sky, it will fly for 70 kilometres before it hits the ground. Now the wings on Tim's glider are simply a flat piece of balsa wood. Square edges, same thickness all over. So if we change the profile of the wing, have a look at this illustration. So you can see the oblong, which is the piece of balsa wood, but if we get a sanding block, like this one here, and sand it away, then we can create an aerofoil shape. And so the key details, we're round at the front end, and then the maximum thickness of the wing is about a quarter of the way across the wing, the chord of the wing, and then it tapers down easily down to the back of the wing. The bottom of the wing is left flat. And if you look closely, there's a line that runs across in the middle of that wing, and it's halfway between the top surface and the bottom surface. It's got a little curve. That's called the camber. And if you've got a little bit of curvature, a bit of camber in the wing, then the performance of the wing is so much better than using a flat piece of balsa wood. What about the wing shape? What it looks like when you look down from above? There are all sorts of different wing shapes, but as I've already recommended, for a balsa wood glider, having a long, narrow wing is the way to go. But I'm also going to suggest that we taper the trailing edge so that it'll be a bit wider at the root near the fuselage, and then it will taper out to the wingtip. That taper will give the glider just a little bit more stability. Now for a wing to produce lift, it needs to be just tilted up into the airflow at least by some number of degrees. And so at high speed or at cruise speed, the angle of attack, as it's called, is fairly small. But as the aircraft slows down, it generates less lift because of the slower speed. So the wing has to go up to a greater angle of attack to continue producing the amount of lift to keep the aircraft in the sky. But if the aircraft keeps slowing down more and more and more, then the angle of the wing will get higher and higher and higher, and finally the air won't flow smoothly around. It will become all roughy and turbulent. And at that point, the wing stops producing lift and the aircraft starts falling out of the sky. So I think on a balsa wood glider, it might help if the wings are attached to the fuselage at about 2 or 3 degrees wing up. That might just help with the stability of the flight. Now Tim's aeroplane, as you can see, as I've got it sitting here falling apart, you can see how it's sloping up at the front. That's called dihedral. So look at this illustration. When you've got the aeroplane flying straight and level, you've got lift being produced by the left and the right hand wing, and everything's all nice. But if it gets a gust or some sort of disturbance, the aircraft might slip sideways or roll sideways. By having dihedral, the wing that is going down or the direction in which it's slipping will actually experience a slightly greater angle of attack. And as we've just said, a higher angle of attack needs more lift. So in this illustration, the lift on the left-hand side will increase and the lift on the right-hand side will reduce. Those two forces, it will make the aeroplane roll back to level, and it'll be back looking like the illustration at the top, everything balanced. So I'm not going to change that. I think Tim's got more dihedral on his than he needs. Probably about 2 to 3 degrees is all that's required. Now the goal is always to keep an aircraft as light as possible. Tim's aircraft has this brace. Oh, I'd really like to get rid of that. The fuselage is at the back end here is heavier than it needs to be. It could be tapered. That would get rid of weight. And if you take some weight off there, then you can reduce the amount of weight at the front. Also, if the nose was a little bit longer, then this weight wouldn't have to be quite as high as it is. So there's a number of things that we could do to reduce the overall weight of the aircraft. And also, turning the wings into aerofoil, obviously you're sandpapering a lot of the wood away, so that reduces as well. Okay, I'm not going to modify Tim's glider. I'm going to leave that alone, but I'm going to make a new one, doing some of the things that I've suggested, or all the things I've suggested. And I've not made a glider like this before. So it'll be interesting. I'll be probably just as interested as you are to see how it ends up when it goes for a test flight. So I'll now get into making my glider.